The Dairy Research and Development Committee of Milk SA, which also attends to animal health and welfare matters in the dairy industry, met on 6 June, where consideration was given to the immediate role of and further actions to be taken by Milk SA with regards to the impact of the foot and mouth disease outbreak in the Eastern Cape. Dr. Mark Chimes joins us now to bring us up to date with matters. Mark, yes, just give us some perspective on the status of foot and mouth in the Eastern Cape province.
Lisa, at the moment, there's 7 farms have tested positive for foot and mouth, mainly in the Humansdorp and Tsitsikamma areas, which is the Kokoma and Koga districts. And then there's another farm up in East London that's also tested positive. So that's where we currently stand.
So what was decided during this meeting?
Well, the effects of foot and mouth disease on the dairy industry are quite unique. Up till now, all the outbreaks have been up in the northern provinces, which are primarily beef farming areas. So all the protocols and that are in place and procedures are aimed at the beef industry. And now we've got the dairy industry where you have a high concentration of animals, a high concentration of farms. There's a lot of contact between these animals, so the disease spreads much easier. And there are certain problems that are unique to the dairy industry, such as there are cows that need to be culled, and these cows have to be moved off the farm, and they can only, especially if it's a quarantine farm, they can only be culled at a quarantine-approved abattoir. And currently, the closest abattoir is up in Limpopo that's approved for foot and mouth disease. There's none approved in the Eastern Cape at all. And then we have other problems that you have bull calves that are being born on these farms. They're normally sold very shortly after birth. These calves cannot be moved off the farms, and the farmers don't always have the facilities to rear and keep these bull calves. They have to feed them, so they need the labor, the cost associated with that. And then in addition to that, you also have heifers being reared on other farms frequently. So when they're weaned at about 6 months old, they frequently move to another farm. So that's problematic. And then when they're due to calve, they have to come back to the main farm where they have to be milked. And that, again, is problematic. So these are issues that the beef industry don't necessarily have to deal with. And these animals are accumulating on the farm. There's a cost and a labor effect, and we need to find solutions fairly quickly for these before it becomes a welfare disaster.
Now, this is where you come in. You were tasked to take the lead in compiling proposals as well as liaising with the department in respect of a few matters. Would you elaborate?
The first proposal is to try and get an abattoir approved for slaughtering, basically an FMD approved abattoir. And this has proven more problematic than we expected. The first problem is if an abattoir slaughters for export, if they handle animals from foot and mouth, then they lose their export status. So they don't necessarily want to take on these carcasses. We've identified 1 or 2 abattoirs, but frequently they might not have all the facilities that's required. For instance, carcasses have to be hung for 24 hours for the pH to drop below 6 before these carcasses are allowed to go into the fridges with other carcasses. So now they need extra refrigeration, for instance. They might not have that. They must have a deboning facility so that foot and mouth infected animals can be deboned. There must be very, very good security regarding any offal or tissues that need to be discarded and destroyed. They can't just be thrown into a pit or whatever. It needs to be incinerated. So these are issues that need to be addressed. So you might find an abattoir that is suitable, but it might not have some of these facilities. Or, and in addition to that, we want the abattoirs to be fairly close. And that's not always possible. And you're moving animals, and frequently these animals have to move on trucks through other farming areas where there's other animals. So you have contamination issues you need to look at as well. But that is the most immediate pressing issue at this stage, is finding an abattoir. The second part is obviously getting movement of animals approved so that the farmers can move the bull calves off their farms or move heifers around or even move the cull cows to abattoirs, etc. That needs to be done. And then the third issue is some of the farmers have requested, especially those that border onto quarantine farms, they have requested that they be vaccinated for foot and mouth disease as well. But it's not as straightforward because it's a state-controlled disease. Only the state can vaccinate these animals, and there are implications further down the line if you do vaccinate your animals.
You said there's quite a lot still to be done, so what's next?
The Abattoir Association and various other players have visited or are visiting the Eastern Cape to inspect abattoirs and to try and find solutions. Part of the solution is where the abattoir might not have the necessary facilities, that they can use containers, for instance, that might have an incineration, so they a portable incinerator or portable cooling facilities for the abattoirs to get that approved. The problem is it's not an overnight process because obviously the staff need to be trained, the permits need to be in place, the government needs to approve it, etc. As regards the movement of animals, the the Department of Agriculture have published the regulations in terms of what is allowable for the movement of animals. Our biggest problem here is that the state vet facilities need to be expanded to be able to handle the amount of administration that is now required, because obviously farmers will be applying for permits. You need to check the animal numbers, etc. It's not just a simple process either. So they need to be given the support to be able to do this. And then, and there has been meetings with the Department of Agriculture. There was a meeting Thursday, the 13th, regarding vaccinating the animals bordering onto the affected farms to create a buffer zone. And then the animals on the farmers bordering them outside that will be tested on a regular basis to check that the disease hasn't spread. But vaccine needs to be allocated for that. These farmers need to volunteer to be vaccinated. The state will not force these vaccinations onto the farmers because once your animals are vaccinated for the first 6 months or so, or 3 months, they can only be slaughtered at an abattoir that's approved for foot and mouth disease. And these animals have to be monitored for the rest of their life until they're eventually slaughtered so that we can control their movement as well. So there's a lot happening all at the same time, and it's been quite a process to get the right people to speak to the right people and to get permits and approvals into place. But we're working on it.
Dr. Mark Chimes from Milk SA joining us today to talk about the foot and mouth disease outbreak in the Eastern Cape.